From the shampoo we use to the makeup we wear, we're surrounded by products that promise us perfection. They promise shine, smoothness, longevity. But what if that pursuit of perfection has a hidden cost, one that goes way, way beyond what we pay at the checkout counter?
So let's really dig into that. We're going to peel back the label on some of the stuff we use every single day to answer that very question. And we'll start with something pretty familiar, but we're going to end up somewhere that affects, well, pretty much all of us.
All right, our journey kicks off with a really popular cosmetic treatment, hair extensions. For a lot of people, they're a quick way to add length, volume, maybe a little splash of color. They seem simple enough, right? But they have a surprisingly long history and some very well-known costs.
It's kind of wild when you look at how long we've been augmenting our hair. I mean, wigs were a huge status symbol way back in the 17th century, but the modern hair weaves we know, they really took off in the 1950s with celebrities, and then, boom, the disco era hit in the 70s and they went completely mainstream. So this idea isn't new at all. It's just kept evolving.
But with that popularity came a very visible downside. The constant pulling, the tension from these weaves, it can seriously damage hair follicles, and sometimes that damage is permanent. The condition is called traction alopecia, and it's a real physical cost, a direct result of the hairstyle. It's the price some people pay for that perfect look, and it's something we can actually see and understand.
Okay, so that's the key right there. We just talked about a visible risk. It's a pretty straightforward trade-off. But this is where our story pivots, from what we can see to the totally unseen, from the hair follicle down to the molecular level. We need to look at the materials themselves, because that's where this all leads.
And here it is. This is the question that changes everything. Traction alopecia, that's a known risk. But what if there are other dangers hiding in plain sight, woven not just into our hair, but into the very fabric of our daily lives? Dangers that are completely and totally invisible. And this is where the path splits. See, extensions can be made from natural human hair, or they can be made from synthetic fibers. And it's those synthetic, man-made materials, these things composed of really complex chemical compounds, that are about to lead us right down the rabbit hole.
And suddenly, we are not just talking about hair anymore. We're talking about a massive class of industrial chemicals that have become some of the most widespread ingredients on the entire planet. They've got a nickname that honestly tells you almost everything you need to know: forever chemicals.
So the scientific name is PFAS. Just think of them as this huge family of synthetic chemicals. They get called forever chemicals because their molecular bonds are unbelievably strong. The bond at their core, this carbon-fluorine bond, is one of the tightest in all of organic chemistry. It's like a chemical superglue that just will not let go. So they don't break down, not in the environment and not in our bodies. They just build up.
And the sheer scale of this is, well, it's just staggering. When we say PFAS, we aren't talking about one or two bad actors. Scientific databases like PubChem list up to 7 million different kinds of these compounds. It's a vast, invisible universe of chemicals.
So where are they? Honestly, it might be easier to ask where they aren't. They're in our waterproof jackets, our yoga pants, our lipstick, our food packaging, and yeah, those same properties that make them useful there, resisting water, oil, and heat, are sometimes used to make synthetic hair fibers more durable. They're in shampoo, paint, carpets, even the screen of the phone you might be holding in your hand right now.
Okay, so they're everywhere. But why does that matter? Well, it matters because decades of this exposure and this accumulation are now being linked to a really terrifying range of health problems. This invisible ingredient is starting to have very, very visible effects on our bodies. And the list of health conditions linked to PFAS exposure is long and it is serious. We're talking about an increased risk for certain cancers, like testicular and kidney cancer, thyroid disease, ulcerative colitis, high cholesterol, and fertility issues. For pregnant women, it's linked to hypertensive disorders, and for kids, to developmental problems and a weaker immune system.
Now, these aren't just vague guesses. A huge, multi-year study called the C8 Science Panel looked at almost 70,000 people living near a chemical plant. And they are the ones who established these probable links between PFAS exposure and a whole list of diseases. This was a landmark moment, scientifically connecting the chemical directly to the condition.
But here's the part that is truly shocking. This isn't new information for the companies who made these chemicals. Internal documents have shown that major manufacturers knew about the toxicity of PFAS as far back as the 1970s, decades before the public or regulators had any idea how big this problem was. And that huge delay between knowing about the problem and doing something about it has created a new problem of almost unimaginable financial scale. The cost isn't just in our health anymore, it's in dollars and cents. And the numbers, they are just astronomical. So let's start with the market itself. In 2023 alone, the annual market for products that contain PFAS was estimated at $28 billion. It's a massive global industry.
Now let's talk consequences. The costs of lawsuits are starting to catch up. In 2023, the manufacturer 3M paid a single settlement of $10.3 billion. And that was just for claims related to water contamination. That's just one company and for just one type of claim.
But the total cost to society, that's the number that's really hard to even wrap your head around. When you factor in everything, all the medical treatments, the monumental task of cleaning up contaminated soil and water all over the world, one estimate puts the potential annual cost at $17.5 trillion. That is over 600 times the size of the entire market that created the problem in the first place.
So, we started with a visible problem, something like hair loss, and we ended up at an invisible, multi-trillion-dollar global contamination crisis. And as regulations finally, slowly begin to catch up and phase out these forever chemicals, it just leaves us with this final, really unsettling question. What else is out there? What other hidden costs are lurking just beneath the surface of the everyday products we use and trust?